be seated. We're going to start.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, estamos a punto de empezar la reunión.
Okay. My name is Robert Warshaw. I'm a retired chief of police. I'm the monitor of the court's order relevant to the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office.
El señor que está hablando con ustedes es el señor Robert Warshaw. Él es retirado como jefe de la policía y es el monitor de esta orden de la Corte Federal.
Okay, and I'm pleased to introduce members of my team, and Chief Martinez can introduce himself, please.
Él quiere introducir los miembros del equipo de monitor. Mi nombre es Raúl Martínez, yo también soy retirado como jefe de la policía de la ciudad de Miami.
Okay. Chief Sherry Kyler.
La jefa Sherry Kyler de la ciudad de Chandler, de aquí en Arizona.
Retired General Dan Doherty.
General Dan Doherty, el que está parado ahí atrás.
And Miss Chris Ramirez in the back of the room.
Y la señorita Chris Ramirez parada atrás en el cuarto también.
For those of you who have not been here before at any of our meetings, we'd like to give you a little bit about our backgrounds, and most of us come from a police background, so in our younger days we did the very job that the Maricopa County Sheriff's deputies are doing on a daily basis.
Para los que están ustedes en su primera reunión, a todos nosotros que somos miembros de este equipo, o casi todos que somos miembros de este equipo, tenemos experiencia de policía y así hemos sido policía en otras ciudades.
And since we've entered retirement, a good number of us are involved in very similar projects in monitoring similar orders, and I do that in the city of Oakland, the city of Niagara Falls, New York, in the city of Detroit, Michigan. I've done it in the New Jersey State Police and a variety of other cities.
Y parte de miembros de este grupo y el jefe Warshaw están haciendo esta clase de monitoreo en otras ciudades como la ciudad de Oakland, California, Detroit, Michigan, Niagara Falls, Nueva York y en otras.
Aside from the members of our team, we have members of the Community Advisory Board. Angeles Maldonado is not here. Ms. Maldonado just gave birth to a baby boy, girl? Boy, okay, this week, but two of our new members, Francisca Porchas, okay, is here, Francisca, who would stand. Viviana Hernandez, who is not here, or maybe won't be, is also a new member of the Community Advisory Board. The Community Advisory Board was put together as a result of the judge's order as a means to ensure that the community would have its input into some of the reforms that are underway in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and would have an opportunity to review policies and protocols that the agency is required to produce.
Una cosa que es un requisito de la orden del juez federal es la creación de un consejo asesor de la comunidad. Está aquí con nosotros la señorita Francisca Porchas, que está presente, es uno de los 3 miembros de este comité. No están con nosotros la señorita Ángeles Maldonado, que acaba de tener un bebé hace unas semanas, y la señorita Viridiana Hernández es parte de este grupo, pero no ha llegado todavía. El consejo, parte del trabajo, de la labor de este consejo, es trabajar con la comunidad, darle las quejas, las preocupaciones que ustedes tienen a nosotros y a la policía de Maricopa, y también van a revisar las políticas de la policía de Maricopa antes que esas políticas sean finalizadas.
I should also say, sitting with us on the podium is Chief Dave Tromby from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, who is going to be making some comments and is going to make himself available to respond to any questions from the audience.
Sentado aquí a mano izquierda el jefe Tromby de la policía de Maricopa, y él va a estar presente, va a decirle una palabra, y si tiene algunas preguntas sobre el departamento, él va a estar presente a contestar todas esas preguntas.
But before we get into the program, I'd like to recognize and introduce the sheriff. And Sheriff Arpaio has come to our last several meetings, and we've been very pleased that he's taken the time from his schedule to come to these meetings, and he's stayed and listened and interacted with citizens, and we're very glad that he's part and parcel of this process. So Sheriff, if you'd like to just please come up and just say very few comments.
Antes que sigamos el programa, que quiere dar las gracias al Sheriff Arpaio, que está aquí con nosotros. El Sheriff ha estado presente en las últimas 3 reuniones y estamos muy felices que él viene y se presenta y habla con la comunidad.
Thank you for inviting me, and also a few minutes I can say a few words. Anyway, welcome everybody in the audience. We are making progress. We're abiding by the judge's rulings, and with the monitor working very closely with you and your team. I appreciate that. And we'll keep moving forward. It's a work in progress, but I'm with my dedicated employees, I feel that we're going to resolve any issues and continue to work with your team.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Sheriff.
El Sheriff dijo que muchas gracias por todos los que están aquí, que bienvenidos, que él está trabajando muy fuerte y el equipo está trabajando muy fuerte para implementar los cambios de reforma y es que está confidente que todos esos cambios abajo de su equipo se van a implementar.
For those of you who are not familiar with the lexicon of litigations and matters that are presented in court, this order was a result of an adversarial process that culminated in an order by United States District Court G. Murray Snow. The plaintiffs in this matter were represented and are still represented by attorneys from the American Civil Liberties Union, and their legal team is appended by others who are not part of the American Civil Liberties Union. We've always made it part of the protocol at these sessions that we give an opportunity to the plaintiffs' attorneys to address the group and give a brief overview of the case. And one of the things we emphasize at all times, and I would ask everyone to take into consideration here, this case has already been litigated. The case is over and we're in the enforcement stages of the case. And obviously, for those of you who watch the news, additional matters come before the court. But as it pertains to central issues, the case is over and we're here to monitor the agency's compliance and to report to the court if there are any diversions from that compliance. But I'm not sure Josh or Dan Pacoda from the American Civil Liberties Union, and Dan is going to give to the audience tonight a brief overview of the case. Dan will give consideration to Martinez, who will transfer.
Este caso que fue decidido en la Corte Federal del juez Snow, los demandantes eran la ACLU representando los miembros de la clase, que son los miembros latinos. El señor Dan Pacoda va a decirle algunos de los puntos de este caso que se ha sido litigado ya en la Corte.
Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me for the invite, and thank you all for coming. This has been a long journey for all of us, but particularly for the community. And indeed, it was the community that led to the success on the plaintiff's side of this case. The community's bearing witness to what had happened and what they endured over many years. As a result of that coming forward, and after a hard-fought trial in 2012, yes. Oh,
Brevemente, él está explicando que este fue un caso muy largo, pero los que ganaron este caso fueron ustedes en la comunidad, que fue en el año 2012 que este caso se acabó, y en 2013 fue donde salió la orden final mandando los requisitos de los cambios de la policía de Maricopa.
As a result of the trial, in May of 2013, as was stated, the Federal District Court Judge Murray Snow wrote in a very comprehensive 142-page opinion that the MCSO and the sheriff had engaged in systematic improper use of race in law enforcement decisions, specifically in the stopping and detention of folks in vehicles. This case was brought on behalf of a class of all Latinos in Maricopa County who are stopped by the MCSO while in a vehicle, drivers or passengers.
En mayo de 2013 el juez Snow salió con la orden en que él encontró que la policía de Maricopa estaba abusando de su poder, que estaba parando a los latinos y estaban haciendo muchas de sus acciones eran basadas en la raza de la persona que estaban parando, no en el delito que la persona estaba parando, y que estaban usando perfiles raciales para hacer las paradas de tránsito.
The racial component was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The court also found violations of the 4th Amendment's unreasonable seizures, prohibition on unreasonable seizures, primarily because of the MCSO stopping people solely on the basis of suspicion of being unlawfully in the country, and that is not a valid basis for stopping or detaining anyone.
La Corte encontró la policía de Maricopa en violación de la 4ª y la 14ª enmienda de la Constitución, en la cual estaban parando, haciendo paradas de tránsito a personas solamente por la raza de ellos y no basado en ningún crimen que ellos habían cometido.
Following that significant decision, a landmark decision in May of 2013, by a number of months after discussions amongst the parties and various competing submissions to the court entered a 59-page remedial order which set out the steps that have to be taken by the MCSO in order to reverse the actions of the prior years and to hopefully engage the community and break down the distrust that has been built up for years.
En octubre de 2013, el juez salió con la orden final de 59 páginas, que son los requisitos que nosotros como monitor tenemos que asegurarnos que la policía de Maricopa está cumpliendo con esos requisitos. Y si esos requisitos se cumplen, va a dar a ustedes, la comunidad, que tengan más confianza en la policía de ustedes.
And one of the important provisions of that remedial decree was the appointment of Chief Warshaw and his monitoring team that have done terrific work in trying to make a reality the extensive remedial order. It will take many years and much of the inputs of the community in order to be successful down the line.
Uno de los puntos de esa orden es la asignación del jefe Warshaw como monitor y otros expertos de la policía, en que estamos vigilando, asesorando, inspeccionando las acciones de la policía de Maricopa para asegurarnos que están cumpliendo con los requisitos de esta orden.
I want to take more time now with the ACLU of Arizona, and my colleague Josh Bender is here with me, a lawyer at our office, and the National ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project, as well as the law firm of Covington and Burling, and the Mexican-American Legal Defense Fund continue to remain on this case, so to speak, and it will require much efforts and ongoing inputs and bearing witness from the community. And we are available at other times, even between these meetings, to talk if people have any information or questions of us. Thank you very much.
El señor Josh Bender, que está aquí, que es otro abogado de la oficina del ACLU aquí de Arizona, y que ellos están involucrados en otros casos que, como estos. Si tienen cualquier preocupación que ustedes tengan, cualquier queja que ustedes tengan, ellos están disponibles para hablar con ustedes también.
Before I make some additional comments, Chief Trombi, are there any members of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, other than the sheriff, who you would want to introduce the audience? We'd certainly want to acknowledge you can use Raul's.
I would, and thank you, Chief Warshaw. Again, for everybody, my name is Dave Trombi with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and I'd like to recognize some people that are here with us this evening to emphasize the importance of what we're doing here tonight. We have obviously our Chief Deputy, Jerry Sheridan, seated behind the Sheriff. We have seated next to Chief Sheridan, Deputy Chief Joe Rodriguez. Across the aisle is Deputy Chief Paul Chagoya. Also in uniform is Captain Dan Whalen from our Southwest or District 2 facility. And then we have our captain back there and lieutenant from our community or implementation division, thank you. And then we have members of our internal affairs, or what we now call Professional Standards Bureau. So I will elaborate just a little bit later if that's okay.
Perfect, thank you, Chief. Why are we here? We're here because Judge Snow ordered that there be community meetings for the community to have an opportunity to hear from the monitors what the progress has been with the implementation of the judge's order. But a secondary, and perhaps it should be the primary benefit, is that we hope that the byproduct of these meetings will be interaction that will occur during these meetings. I appreciate the fact that Chief Tromby is sitting up with us here tonight because we want to give the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office the opportunity to respond for themselves. This is not a court of law. We understand that there are great passions, and we'll certainly listen to and entertain passionate questions, but we want to do this in a very civil way. This is our 7th meeting of this sort. We've had some wonderful and some passionate meetings, and we've had groups with large assemblies of people, and we've had groups with small assemblies of people. And I should tell you, we've gotten tremendous input, even with groups of small people who perhaps, because the group is small, that they were more comfortable in expressing some of their views. So we want this to be informative. We generally hang around, the monitoring team does, after the meeting is over. So if it's more comfortable for anyone to speak with myself or any members of my team, we'll certainly avail you of that opportunity, and we'll look forward to do that. We also have our business cards that we can give you ways and directions as to how you can access us. During the course of the meeting tonight, we will talk about people in the audience who perhaps have reasons to make a complaint against the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. I commend the MCSO. They have members of their Professional Standards Bureau sitting right here to my right. But if for any reason there's anyone in the audience who would need to file a complaint and for whatever reason prefers not to speak to MCO representatives, we have our own forms, and we can assure members of the community that the appropriate authorities in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office will be given that material. Chief Martinez is going to give a brief overview of the history of the case, but more specifically, what the provisions are of the order with which the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office must comply, and the order that we're responsible on reporting the measure of their compliance. So, Chief, you can stay right there. He's going to obviously speak in both languages for himself.
Brevemente, él estaba explicando la razón de estas reuniones. Esta es la 7ª reunión que tenemos sobre este tema. La primera fue en este mismo auditorium en junio del año pasado. Más de 200 personas atendieron esa reunión. La primera razón de esta reunión es de oír de ustedes, como ustedes se sienten de su policía, mejor, peor, cualquier queja, cualquier preocupación que ustedes tengan, estamos aquí para verlo. Muy importante que está el sheriff y los otros miembros de la policía de Maricopa, que ellos oigan también como ustedes se sientan, que ustedes oigan cualquier cosa positiva o negativa que le puedan decir sobre ello. También es un requisito de la orden del juez. I'll be talking to you briefly about the overview of the order. What does the order say? Where basically the order has 59 pages, hundreds of different paragraphs that mandate changes, reform. Most of those changes and reform are mandating good policing practices. Yeah, they're not asking for something that's way out there that's not being done in any other police department. It basically mandates good modern police practices. Una cosa que le voy a explicar ahora, ¿cuáles son los requisitos de la orden? Y esta orden del juez Snow Son más de 59 páginas, cientos de párrafos con requisitos cada uno. Y estos requisitos son solamente requisitos normales de un departamento moderno de la policía que nosotros como monitor tenemos que asesorarnos que lo están implementando. One of the requirements is the creation of an implementation unit that is responsible for implementing all these requirements. And we have the Captain Skinner and Lieutenant Molina from such a unit who are doing a very good job in making sure that that happens. Uno de los requisitos de esta orden es la creación de una unidad de implementación, que ellos son los responsables de que el departamento esté implementando todos estos requisitos. Y está con nosotros el capitán Skinner y la teniente Molina, que son las dos cabezas de esa unidad. It also requires a lot of policy changes, and that's very important. Policemen depend on policies, what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and when not to do it. And you can't hold a policeman responsible for something unless A, they have a policy that tells them how to do it, B, they have training on that policy that shows them how to do it, and then later on their supervision to make sure that their police officers are doing it. Otro de los requisitos de esta orden es la creación de muchas políticas que cambian cómo actúan los policías en la calle. Los policías todos, siendo yo policía por muchos años también, actuamos bajo las políticas. Las políticas nos dicen a nosotros cómo podemos, cómo debemos y cómo no debemos actuar. Después el requisito de adiestramiento bajo esa política, donde le enseñamos a todos esos policías lo que dice la política, y después la supervisión de los supervisores que se aseguran que los policías que están en la calle, que están actuando con ustedes diariamente, están actuando bajo esa política. It requires training on the Fourth Amendment, like Mr. Pagoda mentioned a few minutes ago, the 14th Amendment, supervisory training. It guides on how to do traffic stops, and it requires data be collected on traffic stops. También requiere adiestramiento en la 4ª y la 14ª enmienda de la Constitución de los Estados Unidos. También mucho adiestramiento de la supervisión. Es muy importante que siempre haya en la calle un supervisor que esté vigilando lo que están haciendo la policía. Y también crea muchos procedimientos cuando ellos pueden hacer una parada de tránsito y requiere que colecten toda la data cuando paren a alguien, para poderse asegurar que no están parando solamente a los latinos, no están parando solamente a los afroamericanos, no están parando solamente a las mujeres. And it also requires a very unique system that is the early identification system. And it's a complex system, but basically what it does, it measures a lot of behaviors by police officers and hopefully identifies that police officer before that officer gets in trouble. Maybe the officer's having some problems at home, maybe he's having some financial problems, maybe he or she's having a bad day, but he looks at all those different behaviors and allows the department to approach him, to help him, send him to training, send him to talk to a counselor, get him off the street, etc. But better do that than that officer gets into a bad confrontation with a citizen. Uno de los requisitos especiales de esta orden es la creación de un sistema de identificación temprano del policía. Y es un poco difícil explicarlo en español, pero es un sistema especial que captura muchas de las acciones de los policías, positivas y negativas, si llama enfermo mucho, si llega tarde al trabajo, si no completa los reportes que está supuesto a hacer, etcétera, etcétera, para que el departamento pueda identificar a ese policía y ayudarlo, darle más adiestramiento, sacarlo de la calle, mandarlo que hable con un psicólogo, que lo que haga falta para que ese policía, para poder ayudar al policía o poder prevenir que ese policía haga una acción mal contra ninguno de ustedes. ¿Qué hace el monitor? What does the monitor do? The monitor doesn't work for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. The monitor doesn't work for the ACLU. The monitor works for the court. We are unbiased. We are like, if you're a baseball fan with the umpire at home plate, we call them as we see them. When the players lies, we call it safe. We call them out based on what we saw. We're neither on the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office side nor in the plaintiff side. ¿Qué hace el monitor? El monitor trabaja para la Corte Federal, no trabaja para la Policía de Maricopa, no trabaja para la ACLU, somos imparcial. Nosotros llamamos las cosas como las vemos y con todas las observaciones que vemos. Como monitor tenemos muchas comunicaciones con la Policía de Maricopa, tenemos muchas comunicaciones con la ACLU, tenemos muchas comunicaciones con el CAB, el Community Advisory Board, y es muy importante hacer eso. We are required to do audits and assessments, and we have conducted a number of site visits to all 6 districts of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. We have made, and we make observations every time we visit one of those facilities. Some are positive, some are not positive. Maricopa has implemented some changes based on our observations. Some haven't been done yet, and we'll talk about those changes soon. Una de las cosas que nosotros hacemos también, nosotros hacemos auditorías y evaluaciones de lo que hace la Policía de Maricopa. Hemos visitado todos los distritos, cada uno de los 6 distritos de Maricopa, y hemos dado nuestras observaciones a la Policía de Maricopa, algunas positivas y otras negativas. Ellos han implementado algunos cambios basados en nuestras observaciones. But just as important is to inform you. You know, we file a report, you know, every 3 months we file a report, and we hold meetings such as this, so we can tell you our impression of how the reform is doing. And then we hear from you. Because at the end of the day, doesn't matter what we say, whether good, bad, or indifferent, is how you feel. Do you feel safer? Do you have more trust in your police department? Are you afraid to pick up the phone and call the police department because you're afraid they won't go there to help you, that something negative is going to happen? So that's something you will have to let us know. The real change, the real reform of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is going to come from you, not strictly from what we say or what we do. Al final del día, la cosa más importante, no solamente lo que nosotros digamos como monitor, si están pasando, si no están pasando todas estas evaluaciones, es lo que ustedes como comunidad están diciendo de la Policía de Maricopa. Si se sientan más seguros con ellos, si tienen todavía miedo de llamar a la policía porque el policía no viene a ayudarlos, viene a llevárselos presos a ustedes. Y ustedes van a hacer al final del día lo que van a decirle a la Corte Federal, van a decirle a nosotros si se ha mejorado o no se ha mejorado la Policía de Maricopa. Antes que yo siga, vamos a darle una oportunidad al jefe Trombi que hable con todos ustedes.
Okay. I'll try and be brief, and I will be brief actually, Chief Warshaw, because really what this is about is hearing from you, the community members. But give me just a moment here. Again, for everybody's knowledge here, my name is Dave Trombi with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and I think it was just about a year ago we were here, and what a difference that year has made. We've made some improvements, maybe quite a few improvements, but we have a long way to go, and we realize that. But just kind of knock off a few of them here. As of January of this year, all of our sworn and active volunteers have attended the 14th Amendment, as well as bias-free policing. We've been approved to purchase body cameras, and those will soon be forthcoming. We have a Bureau of Internal Oversight that conducts audits on our divisions and districts within the Sheriff's Office, and they report what they find. Those reports are available to you, the public, and you can view them in their entirety at www.mcsobio.org, and we would encourage you to do so. As Chief Martinez was just mentioning, we have been trained in utilizing our early intervention system. This is something that'll help us as supervisors to recognize potential issues and problems and address them early. As I mentioned earlier as well, we also have Professional Standards Bureau personnel here tonight that are here to take any complaints that you have, because again, unless we hear from you and we are told of things, it's hard for us to address them. So again, if you have issues, complaints, please do not hesitate to contact them. They're here down in the front row. If you just raise your hands real quick again. Thank you. But we're not alone in this. And I would be remiss if I didn't include Chief Orshaw and his team as those that are helping us in this. They're guiding us, they're providing us valuable resources with the personnel that he comes to us with from around the country, from many different professions. This is what's going to help us get through this. But I think Chief Orshaw would also agree that the biggest piece of this is you, the community. And we need to hear from you. We need to know how we're doing, good or bad. Those are the things that are going to make us a better agency, because we are an agency that is in a constant state of improvement and change. And so we sit here before you tonight wanting to hear honestly what you have. If I don't have an answer for you, I promise you there's somebody in this room that probably does from the Sheriff's Office. So I'll end it there because I don't want to take a lot of time. But again, we're here to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Él dijo probablemente que él no quería hablar mucho porque es más importante oír de todos ustedes. Pero estaba explicando algunos de los cambios que han sido implementados por la policía de Maricopa. Pero que al final del día lo importante es lo que ustedes quieren decir sobre el departamento. También introdujeron dos miembros que investigan de asuntos internos, que si tienen cualquier queja contra la policía, hay dos miembros sentados aquí adelante a mi mano derecha, donde usted puede darle su preocupación o su queja. Y como también dijimos antes, el grupo de nosotros también puede recibir esas quejas y nos aseguramos que va a ser investigada. Let me talk to you about the reports we have filed so far. We have filed 2 reports. We're required that every 3 months reports get filed. We're in the midst of completing our 3rd report, which will be filed in the next few days. The first 2 reports cover a time period from January to October 31st of 2014. Voy a explicarles de 2 reportes que ya hemos escrito sobre nuestras observaciones de la policía de Maricopa. Estos reportes cubren un periodo de enero 1 al 31 de octubre de 2014. El tercer reporte está a punto ya de salir y cubre el periodo desde septiembre 1 al 31 de diciembre. As I said before, the order has many paragraphs. We have identified 87 that what we call operational paragraphs that can be measured, and we measure compliance on each of those paragraphs. La orden de 59 páginas tiene cientos de párrafos, pero hemos identificado por lo menos 87 de ellos que son párrafos que se pueden evaluar. How we do compliance is a 3-phase compliance, and do they have a policy that says what the requirement says? Have they trained on that policy as to what the requirement says? And are the police officers on the field complying with what the policy and what they were trained on? So it's a 3-phase step. And to simplify, a real simple example is, if there's a policy, if there's a requirement in the order, which there's not, but I'm going to make this simple explanation, that when a police officer from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office conducts a traffic stop, they have to use their left hand to stop the car. We make sure that the policy says the officer used the left hand to stop the car. Then we make sure that all the officers went through training showing them that they have to use the left hand. Then the 3rd phase is that when they have to fill out this traffic stop form, and that form is going to say, what hand did you use, the left hand or the right hand? So we then inspect all those forms to make sure that they use the left hand or the right hand. And we also do some visual observations. We go out and we see them whether they're stopping the cars with the left and the right hand. It's a real simplistic example, but it's easy to understand that. Unless they pass all 3 phases, they're not in compliance. Déjeme explicarle cómo es el proceso del monitor. Son 3 fases que nosotros miramos. Si hay una política que dice el requisito de la orden, si todos los miembros de la policía fueron adiestrados, entrenados bajo esa política, y si todos los miembros están cumpliendo con esa política, en las observaciones y reportes que ellos tienen que escribir. Un ejemplo bien simple, que no está en la orden, pero un ejemplo que se puede entender bien fácil. Si vamos a decir que la orden dice que en todas las paradas de tránsito, que el policía cuando nos para cualquiera de nosotros, tiene que parar el carro con la mano izquierda, nosotros miramos que la política diga eso. Si miramos después, si todos fueron adiestrados en usar la mano izquierda. Y el tercer punto es, si los reportes que ellos están escribiendo y nuestras observaciones cuando estamos en la calle mirando a los policías, si están usando la mano izquierda. Si ellos pasan esos 3 puntos, esas 3 fases, quiere decir que ellos están cumpliendo con la orden. Pero tienen que cumplir por esa orden no solamente un día, no solamente un año, por 4 años seguidos ellos tienen que estar cumpliendo bajo esa orden. Our first 2 reports, again, we looked at those 87 paragraphs, and we found that the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, up to October 31st, 2014, that's like 4 or 5 months ago, and they have complied with some more after that, but this is the only report we can report at this moment. Out of 87 paragraphs, they're in compliance with 14 of those paragraphs, or 16% compliance, which means they're not in compliance with 73 of the 87 or 84%. But to repeat again, that's up to October 31st, between October 31st and March 11th. I'm sure that, they have come, they have moved more towards the compliance rate. And let me add, it is not unusual for a police department that's under a consent decree or an order in the first year, the first couple of years, to slowly build up to compliance. It takes a long time to come up with training, it takes a long time to change policies, it takes a long time to buy cameras, it takes a long time to implement systems such as the EIS. Para explicar nuestros 2 primeros reportes que estábamos evaluando los 87 párrafos de esta orden, encontró que 14 de 87 o 16% ellos están en cumplimiento y 73 de los 87 o 84% ellos no están en cumplimiento. Pero recuerden que este reporte es solamente del periodo de enero 1 a octubre 31. Después de octubre 31 hasta hoy, marzo 11, estamos seguros que ellos han cumplido en otros requisitos, pero el reporte no sabe todavía sobre eso. Y también nuestra experiencia de monitoreo en otras ciudades, no es incomún que un departamento de policía, el primer año y el segundo en 2 años, se demora en tiempo en hacer cumplimiento porque se demora tiempo en crear la política, adiestrar a los policías, adquirir equipo. Instead of going through information that you may be interested or not may be interested on, I think our time will be better spent listening to you, because we all have said it from the beginning. The job's not done unless we hear from you. Doesn't matter what we say about the reform process if you're not happy with the reform process. So we like to give you all the opportunity to say positive things, say negative things, say comments, say concerns that you have about the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. En vez de tomarle más tiempo a ustedes, estar hablando de los reportes, los requisitos, el acuerdo, etcétera, que son cosas que a ustedes no les interesa mucho. Vamos a darle a todos ustedes una oportunidad que hable con nosotros, que hable con la policía. Si tiene alguna pregunta, el sheriff está aquí, sus otros jefes están aquí para contestar a esta pregunta, porque en realidad, al final del día, lo que cuenta es lo que piensan ustedes, no lo que pensamos nosotros. So if somebody has any questions, Ms. Ramirez is here. There's a microphone. She can get to you, or you can move up and I can give you this microphone. Si tiene alguna pregunta, alguna queja, algo positivo, por favor, la señorita Ramírez está ahí. Chris, let me give you this microphone.
Hola, buenas noches. Hello, would anyone like to make a statement or ask a question?
Buenas noches a todos. Una vez están hablando de la política, que si los policías están entrenados o no. Hace 25 años, más bien 27 años tengo yo viviendo aquí en Arizona, Y en la parte de donde vive la gente blanca, como la llaman ustedes, y el señor Arpaio, en cuanto se le hablan tardan 5 minutos en llegar la policía. En cambio, en los barrios donde vivimos la gente de color morena, llamamos para reportar una balacera, un asalto, un robo, a alguien que golpearon en la calle. Tardan más de 1 hora en llegar los policías, o simplemente no llegan. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que está pasando ahí? Sigue habiendo racismo. Ahora, también tenemos nuestros presos. En las cárceles privadas se cobra por ir a visitarlos, les cobran la comida. Entonces, ¿qué está pasando con todo el dinero que nos están quitando, nuestros impuestos que estamos pagando?
Si me da un chance para traducir, por favor. A lady saying she's been in this area about 25, 27 years, and she basically is saying that the police response time in the white community is very short, very quick, within 5 minutes. That when they call from communities of color, it takes a long time, an hour, if they ever come. And so she said there's racism going on because of the lack of response or slow response time to communities of color. She's also stating that in the jail system, that the detainees are being charged money for their food. So she's wondering what's happening to the tax money they're supposed to be paying for that.
That's a very good question you're asking, and it's a very good point that you're making. But one of the things I want to do from the beginning here is remind everyone that some of the issues that you may bring up are not necessarily covered by the order that we have been asked and directed by the court to enforce. But with that said, since we want this to be a good exchange of information, and we have a representative in the form of Chief Tromby, Chief Tromby will attempt to answer that question. So, Chief, if you would.
Déjame explicar un momentico antes que el jefe antes que el jefe Tromby le conteste su pregunta. Dice el jefe Watson que su pregunta es muy buena, muy al punto, pero recuérdense que los requisitos del acuerdo, hay muchas cosas que no cubren el requisito del acuerdo. Como la policía le responde o no le responde más rápido a la comunidad blanca en vez de la comunidad del color de nosotros, como cosas de la cárcel no tienen nada que ver, pero el jefe Trump iba a contestarle ahora sobre este punto.
Yeah, try not to stop. With regards to response times, I understand that the appearance can be what you believe it is, and I don't wish to debate that with you. But there are some things that go into response times, such as priority calls and other things that are occurring that have an impact on how an officer or a deputy is dispatched. And if I could ask a question, what city might you live in?
¿Cuál es el nombre de la ciudad donde vive?
Es en el sur Phoenix. Porque cuando vivía en Aguatuki, cualquier cosa que se reportaba, inmediatamente llegaba la persona, llegaba la policía. En cambio, de este lado no llega. Hay tiradero de drogas, que quizás me van a decir que eso no tiene nada que ver con este plantel, pero sí tiene que ver, porque estamos necesitando de la policía. ¿Cómo vamos a tener confianza de la policía si la policía no va a ver estas cosas? Que se está tirando droga, está habiendo prostitución, están robando, están maltratando a los animales. ¿Y la policía dónde está cuando se hacen esos reportes? Nunca vigilan estos lugares. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que está pasando? Tanto con nuestra raza como con la raza oscura está este problema. Ahora, paran a un auto, un carro cualquiera, que sea de una persona morena, hay hasta 4 policías, 4 patrullas. Y en cambio, donde se necesitan, no están. ¿Qué pasa?
I would be equally frustrated. In fact, I have been equally frustrated as a citizen myself, calling for police service, and it takes longer than I would like it to take. But I have to remember, and had to remember then, that it was because what I was calling for wasn't of a great priority. The things that you named, to include animal cruelty and drugs and some other things, those are very important issues, and we at the Sheriff's Office try to address them head on, if you will. So I would encourage you to contact Phoenix Police and inquire as to why that might take them longer. My thought is you're probably going to hear a lot of what I just said.
Bueno, él está explicando, el jefe económico está explicando que la policía la mandan basado en la... Disculpe, no sé qué está pasando. Basado en la prioridad de esta llamada. Y que no debe estar pasando lo que usted está diciendo, pero él va a mirar eso.
System that this microphone is working on, and our person working on the other system is not available. We do apologize for that feedback.
Una pregunta.
Sí. Buenas noches todos. Yo soy Florencia González y también quiero dar a saber el mucho daño que ha hecho el señor Apayo a las familias latinas. Porque estos niños son hijos de padres deportados. Y ellos los deportaron hace 4 años. Pero tengo otros deportados que los deportaron hace 7 años. Con mucha arbitrariedad entraron a la casa de mi hijo, jalando a mi nuera y levantando a los niños que son nacidos aquí, que son tan gringos como ustedes también, ¿no? Y así los levantaron, los sacudieron, y al niño más grandecito lo quisieron esposar porque él quiso oponerse, que se llevaban a su mamá. Entonces lo maltrataban al niño. Esos niños necesitan un psicólogo. Esos niños no están bien todavía, han pasado años pero siguen sufriendo esto. En la escuela van mal, en la escuela tienen problemas, pero es por eso mismo. Entonces, mi nieto el más grande, él quiere hablar con el Obama o con ustedes, porque él quiere decirle que qué les habría al Obama que le hicieran a él, a su mamá, lo mismo que le hicieron a él. Eso quería darles a saber, el mucho daño que ha hecho el señor Arpaio. No se cansa de darles lata a los mexicanos, a los que somos de color chocolatita. Quiere él está como el fulano aquel que quería pura gente de blanca con ojos verdes y azules, y a los chocolatitos no nos quiere, él quiere pura gente blanca. Entonces quiere apartarnos a nosotros y siempre nos ha hecho mucho daño. A mí me ha hecho muchísimo daño porque me ha hecho mucho daño a mi familia, a mis nietos, a mis hijos, deportándolos. Eso yo estoy muy enojada con él. Es todo por un momento, gracias.
Gracias, señora.
She's telling about an incident that happened maybe 4 to 7 years ago where they broke into her house and people were deported. And some of her family members were deported, some of her kids or grandkids were handcuffed, and some were taken to jail. And that she'll never forget that, and how the kids or grandkids were impacted by that incident. She'll never forget that incident. It's basically, she related the incident.
I'm not here to address racial profiling. I'm here because the community service announcement said that if I had any concerns about the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, that I was invited here to make my concerns known. And my concerns concern the correctional facility and the lack of medical care provided to inmates. My son 3 years ago, entered the 4th Avenue facility, and within 24 hours was in the county hospital near death. He was a type 1, he is a type 1 diabetic, and he was refused insulin. He had requested from several of the guards, 6 apparently, that he was needing his insulin, and he was ignored and threatened. It wasn't until a clerk who was processing him called him to her desk, and he could not answer questions, he could just put his head on her desk, that she realized that there was some type of medical emergency. He was in the facility for 2 days while they stabilized his sugar. And when he was released and went back, he went to Durango. He was given insulin twice a day, in the morning and at night. And as a type 1 diabetic, this is not the type of medical care that he needed. As a type 1 diabetic, he needs to take insulin with every single carb. There were other type 1 diabetics in the facility who helped him out. They shared with him protein that he could get through to the next meal. He went and exercised out on the court, but the entire time he was there, the 54 days, his sugar levels were 3 times beyond their acceptable level. I tried with great zeal to appeal to the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, the nurse, the medical coordinator. I appealed to anybody that I could. My daughter, who's a pharmacy student, called. She was transferred 11 times, once to the morgue. As a result of being in there for 54 days, when this was brought to my attention, I hired a lawyer. Up until this time, my son had tried to handle this matter on his own with a public defender. And the lawyer assessed the situation and decided he had received poor legal advice, and we were able to get him out of the jail temporarily while he was rescinding his plea. When he came home that night and we watched the news, there was a news report of opening arguments in a suit against the Maricopa County Department of Corrections for an inmate who died of type 1 diabetes and not receiving medical treatment. As a mother, even if it's somebody who made a mistake by getting an aggravated DUI, I was appalled. My son was reassessed. He had to go back into the facility to finish his term for 3 months. When he went back in, despite the fact that we brought this to the judge's attention and all kinds of people's attention, the news we got from him was that he was not receiving his insulin. I contacted the lawyer who got him in a federal facility where he was able to complete his sentence and receive the medical attention he needed. When my son went into the 4th Avenue facility, he had 20/20 vision. And as a result of his diabetes and not having the proper care, he now has 2200 vision. And he has cataracts, and he has a retina condition associated with diabetes. He also has a stomach condition associated with the disease. All of these are irreparable. And my plea to you is, this is the audience that I was so desperately trying to get 2 or 3 years ago, to get him attention, and for other people in there, that there needs to be somebody monitoring the medical attention given to the inmates.
As I had said in response to a previous question, and of course that's a very compelling story, and thank you for sharing that with us. The particular order that we're associated with does not address the issue of the correctional facility.
I hope you find this alarming enough to give it your
Right, you're correct. This is the appropriate forum. So I'll allow Chief Tromby to respond to your concern and your questions, and I'm sure that Chief Tromby, if necessary, will follow up with you if he's not in a position to address that. So, Chief Martinez.
Brevemente, la señorita está hablando de un incidente de el hijo de ella que cometió un error y fue arrestado y lo mantenieron en la cárcel y que no le dieron el tratamiento médico que le hacía falta, y por falta de ese tratamiento de insulina que estaba supuesto de él recibir cada vez que comía, él ha perdido casi su vista y ha tenido muchos problemas médicos. Y otras personas que están en esas cárceles por falta de tratamiento, otro muchacho que estaba en esa cárcel falleció por falta de insulina. El jefe Trump ahora va a contestar su pregunta, pero el jefe Walsh también explicó, desafortunadamente, esta orden no tiene nada que ver con la cárcel. Puede ser que en el futuro haya otras órdenes parecidas a este, pero la potestad de nosotros como monitor no nos deja mirar nada de lo que está pasando en la cárcel de Maricopa.
As a parent, I can see and feel the pain that you just displayed as a result of what your son, and I apologize, some of the audio wasn't that great, so if I'm wrong. As a parent, I would say to you, I'm sorry that you and your son and your family had to experience that. And standing here and telling you about things such as correctional health services, which is who actually administers our health care program to the inmates within the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and not under the control of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. I can tell you about the in-processing and the screening that takes place when an individual is arrested by any law enforcement agency and booked into our jail to be made aware of issues potentially life-threatening so that they can receive the correct treatment and health care that they need and deserve from the correctional health services. But at the end of the day, standing here before you as a parent, we can say simply, we're very sorry that you had to go through that, because all the other things I just mentioned, and I can look you in the eye and tell you this, probably won't make a difference, because you experienced it, you felt it, and you need to let people know about that. And so I applaud you for your bravery in standing there and telling that very difficult story.
If I may, I did want to let you know, and others who may be in the same situation, there's another case, a case called Graves versus Arpaio, started in 1977, concerning the inadequate conditions in the Maricopa County jails. Much of it has been resolved now after these 30 whatever years. But the court, most recently, Judge Wake and the district court found that the medical care and mental health care were still not adequate. And that case continues on those two issues. I'm sorry you didn't know about it, and it's too late, obviously, in this instance. But we do take and pass on. It's mostly the National Prison Project of the ACLU that's litigating that case.
Él explicó que hay otro caso que empezó en 1977 contra la cárcel del condado de Maricopa y que este caso sigue andando todavía, donde han encontrado que todavía en el día de hoy el tratamiento médico en las cárceles de Maricopa no son muy buenos.
I may be misunderstanding this, but it seems to me that the monitoring committee is looking on a case-by-case basis at the various stops and so forth that are taking place in the sheriff's office in order to monitor compliance. I'm wondering if the records of that, whether or not each individual stop is in compliance, is somewhere that's accessible. I'm a criminal defense attorney. Obviously, that could be relevant, with respect to things like challenging probable cause with respect to particular stops, or if there were constitutional violations involved in the stops. And so I'm wondering if you guys are looking at each of the individual cases that have taken place, if there's a place that data can be accessed.
Este señor es un abogado que está preguntando si todas las paradas que hace la policía de Maricopa son evaluadas por el monitor, porque puede ser que en un caso que él tenga, puede ser que lo ayude a defender ese caso. And basically, there's thousands of stops that get created. The order requires the creation of a stop form, which they have created recently. We do look at those forms. We take samples of those forms, or look at samples of those forms, and we look at a myriad of issues that are in those forms for compliance. If the order says they must, they must make an initial opinion on the race or ethnicity of the driver, and from when they approach a car, what do they think they're stopping? male, female, white, Hispanic, black, etc. Sometimes they can't see because of, blackout windows and so on and so. So there's a myriad of things we look for, and we create them. They're not in compliance with that yet, but again, it's not unusual not to be in compliance with something that just started. But I mean, some of those things, traffic stops forms in our public records, not our, our reviews are not. Our reports, once they're filed, they are public records. Our reviews do not include all the supporting documentation. And Chief, I'm not sure if our internal reports are ever public record or not. They're records of the court. That delineates what we observe in that specific stop.
But we would also add, and I think it's important, that part of the order, and the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office has been expedient in doing this, has been the purchase of cameras, which is going to capture these stops. So there will not only be aggregated data, which is required, so obviously aggregated, meaning that there is an examination of all the stocks individually and collectively, but that data and some of the narrative that goes with that data is only as good as the quality of the officer who writes it and who enters it. So if we believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words, they've purchased a significant number of cameras, so we will see a significant number of pictures. And as to what the access will be for members of the community, members of the criminal defense bar, I don't really know for certain, okay? But the general answer to your question is yes, and it's yes plus, because that written data will be enhanced with the presence of video.
When those cameras are due to be deployed, and what the policy is going to be regarding what they require to be on?
The policy is being developed and vetted through the parties involved. And so once we have a policy in place, the purchase of the cameras will only take us a couple of weeks to receive them. There's some training that goes along with the issuance of the cameras. And in fact, I think we're starting to do some of the trainer that is sending individuals to the training, who will then provide the training to a number of deputies, if not a lot of our deputies. And so once that occurs, we will get them out onto the road. Did that answer your question, sir?
Déjeme traducir brevemente. El jefe Bolso está explicando que hasta en este momento las evaluaciones que estamos haciendo son el formulario que llena el policía en la calle para ver cómo actuó y cómo lo paró. La policía de Maricopa está a punto de comprar las cámaras que los policías van a estar grabando lo que pasó en esa parada. Así que no es solamente lo que él escribió en el reporte, pero vamos a tener una película, un vídeo que va a enseñar si lo que puso en el reporte fue correcto o no, para poder verificar si usó la mano izquierda o si puso solamente que usó la mano izquierda, pero en realidad no la usó. El señor Trombi dijo que están en el proceso de adquirir esa cámara, que están escribiendo la política en condición con los demandantes y con nosotros. Estamos revisando que la política sea una buena política, que el policía cuando va a hacer algo, si es un policía malo, que son pocos policías malos, pero todo el departamento tiene un policía que puede actuar individuo, que no apague la cámara cuando él vaya a hacer algo.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the fact that you've described that the deputies are receiving training and that they're also being tested on what the training is, and also that they have an understanding of what the court order says. And I know that, obviously in this lawsuit, we've established that there was a pattern of racial profiling. The judge found that was in case of fact, and the sheriff continues to, besides all the training and everything that's taking place within the department, outside of the department while the sheriff continues to talk to the media or to campaign. I mean, after all, the sheriff is an elected person, he's a politician, and in some of the comments that he makes, it goes against, contrary to what the deputies are trying to do. And the sheriff, you're the head of this agency, and in order to establish that the agency is going to change, we're hoping that your leadership can actually set the tone for the deputies in also changing the way that you talk to your constituents. You set a very negative tone about the court, about the lawsuit, about the administration, about Obama. And I think in order to show good faith and in order to extend the olive branch and to show that there's a time of healing, we've asked for a public apology in the past. We've asked for an apology with respect to the fact that maybe the town of Guadalupe was misled in the operation that took place back a few years ago because it was not very truthful, and the mayor said so. And also an apology to the way that you direct yourself to our community. I'm offering right now this microphone to you so that you can offer this public apology.
This is not what this forum is for, and I would like the moderator to please take control of this forum again so that people are not addressing directly within Sheriff Arpaio's space. This is a forum for the public to make their concerns known, and this is not the time or the place for this posturing.
Let me just, please.
Let me translate what they did. Ms. Lena Guzman was talking about the sheriff, and she requested an apology. Perdón, lo siento mucho. La señorita Guzmán estaba hablando sobre el sheriff Arpaio, y ella le estaba pidiendo aquí que ella le estaba dando a él una oportunidad que él le diera una disculpa a la comunidad de cómo el departamento había actuado, y como el mensaje que él le manda a través de la prensa es en contra de lo que están tratando de hacer los policías, que están tratando de hacer un buen trabajo. La señorita Afrate, que es una de las abogadas del sheriff, dijo que este no es el lugar de hacer eso, de confrontar al sheriff y el jefe de Fuerza Laboral.
Let me just say this. This is a forum to have an exchange of thoughts and ideas and questions. Sometimes there will be people in the audience who will say wonderful platitudes about the sheriff's office or about the sheriff, and sometimes there will be others who won't. So it would be extremely difficult for us to filter out beforehand what people may say. The only thing that we would ask is that this is not particularly a forum where members of the audience are here to speak to other members of the audience, and I granted the sheriff is a unique member of the audience. So one of the things that we would like is that if you have something to say and you want to make it in the terms of a declaration, hopefully let's end it with a question so there could be a possible outcome so we can have a civil process here. So I'm sure, Ms. Wisman, that the sheriff's representative taken note, okay, of what you said, and let's just move on.
Estas reuniones son para ustedes, para que ustedes digan sus quejas, que nos las digan a nosotros, no que se las digan unos a otros. Y por favor, que todos nos demos a cada uno la cortesía que nos merecemos, que ellos están cogiendo nota de todo lo que ustedes dicen, positivo y negativo. Nosotros no sabemos qué preguntas tienen ustedes, de lo que van a decir ustedes, no son controlados por nosotros. Esto es un micrófono abierto, pero le pedimos por favor la cortesía en lo que van a decir.
This gentleman right here, I've seen him raise his hand right here, Chris.
Thank you. I'm a physician here in Phoenix, and for over 20 years, and retired now, and some expertise in healthcare, many years of experience, and also in community medicine, which is a discipline that deals with the health of a community. I think that we have an intimidation of this community by sheriff and a fear that goes on. You can see it by this sparsely populated meeting. And I also feel that you are conducting this meeting in a very strange manner by having the police force here or the sheriff's office and answering questions in a debate type of way and a response. And I would ask that you respond, Mr. Warshaw, only you, as the monitor, instead of delegating responses to the sheriff's representatives. I would hold that you are the responsible person for responses. Now, I think that I had the question before this lady even mentioned it, that this sheriff has never apologized or shown any kind of feeling of commitment to resolve the issue of racism in his part and his staff. And I have seen recently in the federal court that there's been evidence of his recalcitrance in the sheriff's department recalcitrance at responding to that by distinctly instructing their officers not to do certain things that would comply with orders. Therefore, I really ask you, have you seen a apology attitude or a resolve to behave in a non-racist manner, and that this is evident to you? And if not, I ask you to find a way to remove this man from office as soon as possible, because he is a threat to all of us. He is also a terrible threat to our income tax and of the city of Phoenix people and the county and the state, that tens of millions of dollars of our money are being wasted in lawsuits, and that he just puts over to the taxpayer. Recently, there has been some mention of that he should be responsible, personally liable for these costs. Do you have any opinion about that?
Déjeme traducirle para lo que no pudieron entender. El doctor que ha sido retirado fue doctor en esta comunidad por 20 años. Él está en contra del sheriff Arpaio. Está diciendo que las acciones de él y su departamento intimidan a la comunidad, por eso que muchos no están aquí como deben estar, y que él nunca ha oído que el sheriff ha pedido una disculpa de las acciones de su departamento, que por culpa de esas acciones millones de pesos se han pagado en pleitos que ha perdido contra miembros de esta comunidad, de su comunidad, y que él pide que él no está a favor que están presentes aquí en estas reuniones los miembros de la policía de Maricopa, y él pide que las preguntas deben ser contestadas por nosotros. Y él le pidió la opinión del jefe Washoe si él y nosotros hemos visto un cambio en las actitudes de la policía.
Doctor, I appreciate your question, and I appreciate your service, and I mean that sincerely. But I do want to correct something. First of all, the monitor here, which is me, you're right, we do not exercise dominion over the sheriff. This is not a receivership. What we do is report facts to the court, and the court makes appropriate determinations, and if based on those determinations, a court determines that it's appropriate to take any kind of actions in the form of sanctions, whatever courts do, what courts do. So I'm not in a position to compel the sheriff to do anything. regarding your question about the apologies, I don't know if I can use the word apologies. You used it in your question. I don't know if I can use it in my answer. I think what you're saying, but these are my words, these are not your words, is there contrition? Okay? Is there contrition? Can I honestly stand in front of you tonight and say that I've seen contrition on the part of deputies or senior leaders or middle leaders from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office as it pertains to past acts? I can't say that. I can't. But I'm also the monitor in 3 other cities as we speak. And I can't say that either, because I can't speak for what may be in people's minds. What we really assess is their actions on the street. So whether or not their sense of humanity in the delivery of their police services enhances the quality of that service to the point that they're not just delivering the services, but feeling empathy, concern, spirituality, and a variety of other community. And I appreciate your background in community medicine and the mental health and well-being of the community. That's very, very hard for us to say. But what I can tell you is this. We have seen in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, notwithstanding things that are articulated clearly in the newspaper, as pertains to either the sheriff or senior executives of the Sheriff's Department, we've also had the opportunity to meet a new generation of young sheriff's deputies, young dedicated officers who come to this profession well-educated with a commitment to do the right thing. And, you know, whether or not one can see a big ship turning in the ocean absent a stationary object, I don't really know. So what I would say is that in some instances, we don't share some of the optimism that we've seen the Sheriff's Department assess in their own reports about themselves. But do we see the ship moving and do we see progress? The answer is yes. Is it perfect? The answer is no. As Chief Martinez has said earlier, and I've been doing this for 16 years in agencies, not just in the United States, but across the world. You know, Rome was not built in a day. Rome is not going to be rebuilt in a day. So progress at the beginning is slow. I would only ask, and I'm glad that you're here, and it's interesting that someone from your background would come here, and I'm glad that you do. You will have to help assess that as a member of this community. People who live here will be able to make a better determination than we who come from afar and come here on a monthly basis as to what's in the hearts and minds of the people who are delivering services. Are there reforms? The answer is yes. Are they where they should be? The answer is no. Should they be at a certain location in the reform process now? Maybe, but this is only 1 year, and this is a voluminous project that requires the acquisition of technology, the introduction of new policies, the procurement of material they never had to use before, the creation of curriculum and lesson plans, and the technology to deliver it. So this is not something that I can honestly tell you is going to happen overnight. So again, I appreciate the question. I wish I could be as exact in my answer as you were in your question.
If I may.
As long as it's brief.
If this was a matter of a physician practicing healthcare in the community, and he did malpractice, your comments about rehabilitating that person or whatever would never pass judgment, because that physician could not be tolerated to continue in doing bad practices for a year, 2 or 3, while gradually creating something going on. You just could not have that happen.
I don't want to get into an individual debate with you, Doctor, but I'm not certain that the analogy is the the best one. We're dealing with a police institution. I know we can argue that it's a medical community, but there are also individual practitioners in the medical community. I would also say that if we're going to use as something analogous the behaviors of medical practitioners, I don't think that you would find the engagement of a United States District Court judge in instituting and ordering reforms in the way medical practitioners deliver medical services, because any number of medical organizations would gather together to thwart the efforts by a federal judge to make changes in the way medicine is delivered. In this particular case, because this is a public institution delivering public services, I understand these are life and death issues that police officers deal with. We do have a federal judge, and the United States District Courts are very much behind in monitoring not only what we do, but obviously what this agency is doing. Sure. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tony Navarrete, and I'm here. Well, I understand that we're all here because the sheriff was found guilty, and this is an enforcement panel really hearing responses from the community. And for me, I think that growing up here in Phoenix, I really have seen the sheriff's office, and I grew up around the Crowhaven area, so the sheriff's office was always around growing up, and was always kind of going through the neighborhoods, with little miniature tanks, with a lot of patrol cars. It always seemed like a war zone, to be quite honest with you. And I'm really happy with the judge's order, because one thing that the community already knew that maybe wasn't public, or maybe the sheriff and the sheriff's office didn't know, is that there has always been a level of mistrust, and it's always been completely shattered. And all the court case did was prove it, already to, we already knew it as a community. And what I find challenging, it's hard for me to trust the sheriff's office. It really is, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in this room. But I think about even, the camera process. Was there even an open bidding process for the cameras? I think about, the level of authenticity that the county is changing. And I'm sure that there's a lot of great people, and I have friends that work at the sheriff's office, but it's not authentic when you have the leader of a department not publicly making an apology even after being found guilty. And that's a problem at the leadership. And I think it's a problem when you're trying to change this image and put together these pieces that have been broken. And the other thing that I want to mention, and that I am concerned about, because we all know someone that's been affected by the sheriff and has been taken or referred to ICE, or it's real. It's not fake. This is not something that doesn't exist. It affects a lot of people. Maybe not a whole lot of folks in Fountain Hills, but it affects a whole lot of people in the city of Phoenix, the West Valley, the areas where there's people that look like me.
Okay, thank you.
My question was, I want to know what happens to those who are currently incarcerated that were potentially and were victims of his actions. Like, is there justice for them? Yeah, that's my question, really.
I can only give you, I personally, as the monitor, can only give you a very, very generic answer, because issues of incarceration, and whether incarcerations are predicated on illegal acts, okay, we're not, quite frankly, the best persons to ask for that question. I'm sure there's a variety of legal recourses available to individuals who believe that they were incarcerated for inappropriate or illegal or touch that, but I'm sure that there are any number of legal authorities in Maricopa County who have great expertise in that.
Este señor nos estuvo hablando de que él se crió en esta comunidad, que él se recuerda los tanques que pasaban por su vecindario, la policía de vecindarios, y que una cosa que este caso hizo es que los abusos que ustedes han vivido toda su vida con estos abusos, la Corte Federal, el juicio federal, los resultados de ese caso, le ha probado al mundo lo que ustedes están diciendo ya hace años. Él también estuvo hablando de que el sheriff nunca le ha pedido perdón a la comunidad, y también al final él hizo la pregunta de que si hay alguna forma de ayudar a los que fueron arrestados bajo abusos de la oficina del sheriff. Nuestra potestad como monitor a nosotros no nos da esa clase de potestad, de fuerza, de ir al pasado y cambiar lo que pasó al pasado. Ellos han pagado millones de pesos por lo que hicieron en el pasado. Hay otras cosas pasando en estos momentos que puede ser que le cueste más dinero, pero como monitor estamos viendo lo que está pasando hoy, que no pase otra vez, y asegurándole a todos ustedes de que no puede pasar otra vez.
This gentleman over here behind Chief Sheridan's hat, yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Wade, and I was born and raised in the area. I'm a mental health professional, and I was raised in the law enforcement culture. When my mother and father met, he was a DPS employee, and he went on to become chief of police of 2 of Phoenix's satellite cities. And this is the statement part of this, and I will finish with a question as you suggested. I was raised in an environment of great adversarial attitudes, a lot of us versus them, that I haven't really seen huge change in. And each of those adversarial attitudes on both sides, they feed into one another. I've also seen, and I don't need to use mental health or medicine as a metaphor in this case, I've seen policies and actions instituted that fly directly in the face of evidence that says outright that they're just wrong. My question actually was anticipated by one of the previous questioners. It had to do with the metrics I believe you might be referring to, and I believe Chief Warshaw, you had referred to 87 metrics or 87 points that were being examined. It seemed to be suggested that the only thing that was available publicly were going to be summaries or reports, and that the only things that were being studied were samples of what sound like should be very numerical data points, which could possibly be a vast amount of data, but that probably should be studied comprehensively. I don't understand your use of the word samples. What cameras might do in this case just makes what would otherwise be quantitative points and quantitative research as to whether or not policies and decisions are being adhered to qualitative and more hazardous in terms of how they're judged. I suppose the actual question is the data itself, as well as the methods that the data are being examined with. You had mentioned things like traffic stop data. You'd mentioned interpersonal and financial and dispositional data for individual officers. And I'm not suggesting anybody's anonymity be violated, but these kinds of data, are they being examined in a systematic fashion?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. I think in fairness to the audience, because you're asking a scientific question, I want to give Chief Martinez an opportunity to translate what he says, so everyone can have the benefit. Okay. Now, did we? No,
Él se crió en una familia que mi padre y la madre eran policías. Y él está haciendo la pregunta de que si los puntos que nosotros estamos observando son una data que puede probar o puede desprobar si siguen los abusos, si los 87 párrafos que se están mirando son párrafos clave de cómo se comporta la policía de Maricopa. Y también cuando estas cámaras empiecen a trabajar, que será bien pronto, no va a ser solamente lo que escribió el policía en el formulario, pero va a haber una grabación que puede probar o desprobar que si el policía lo que escribió fue correcto o no.
The amount of data generated by this police department or any other police department is extensive, granted. And while I cannot quote chapter and verse Arizona statute, what may be statutorily exempt from the public eye, I would venture to guess that, notwithstanding, as you said, the anonymity of individual officers, the overwhelming majority of the metrics that we're talking about is available to the public. I guess. In terms of the sample, I would say this much. When we, as a monitoring team, are asked to assess the appropriateness of traffic stops and whether or not those traffic stops comport with the provisions as articulated in the judge's order, we are talking about a significant number of stops. We are talking about a lot of data. It is for this reason why you just happen to have met, and most of the team that's here tonight are police officers, where we have 2 PhDs on our team who statistically validate random sample polls to make sure that the information we put out to the public is representative, okay? And which is why in most monitoring teams, clearly most monitoring teams that I've been privileged to lead, we always have a PhD, who usually someone in criminal justice, but we make sure they have a research PhD so they can statistically validate it. They use any number of programs to determine sample polls. Now, having said that, there are a multitude of requirements that require self-assessment on the part of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, where they will do random samples of their own, and we can see their random samples of stops. Okay? And as time goes by, we are fully authorized to access any and all material that's reposited in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, where we can do random samples. So my point is this, that with the authority that we derive from the court, with the presence of plaintiffs' attorneys, clearly counterbalanced by the presence of defense counsel as well, there are a lot of people looking at a lot of stuff, okay? There are a lot of people looking at a lot of stuff, and there are a significant number of checks and balances, which, in my view, makes it easier for me to assure you and the public that what we're assessing in terms of a sample is representative of that population as a whole.
La pregunta que hizo este señor es de las miles de paradas que están haciendo la policía, cómo nosotros nos aseguramos si lo que estamos mirando es un ejemplo correcto de cómo está actuando la policía. En el grupo de nosotros hay 2 doctores de matemáticas que son expertos en crear lo que se dice un sample, un ejemplo, que ese ejemplo representa el universo de todas esas paradas. Entonces podemos revisar y darnos cuenta si solamente están parando a ustedes, que si solamente las situaciones de tránsito son personas de color, y se miran todos esos números mirando todas esas clases de clasificaciones. Pero más importante que nosotros, la ACLU está presente aquí con ustedes también, que ellos pueden hablar de lo que está pasando. La señorita Porchas, que está aquí, y ella nos da información a nosotros que lo que está pasando aquí, que nada ha cambiado. Reuniones como esta le da a usted la oportunidad que nos diga si los cambios han sido efectuados o no, o si solamente es un cuento lo que nos están haciendo. Pero en realidad, hasta que ustedes no estén aquí y de vez en que nos digan que ha cambiado la cosa, ellos nunca van a salir bajo el control de esta orden.
have to say what is my problem. I'm sorry, I can't say what you want and I say. I have to say what I want, okay? I understand that you say that we want to be specific, but the problem is that it's a whole system, and the big problem is the police department and the very bad judicial system and the sheriff office. It's very sad for me that I was victim of the police system, after with the justice office and of the sheriff department. I was accused for pretending to be a killer for the police department. I was very close to be on the jail for 25 years. And in the jail of Mr. Arpaio, I was tortured, and I suffered everything what you can think about that. I agree with the lady who was talking about the medicines, because I am epileptic and I am diabetic, and I never give me the medicines and the attention I needed, besides the torture. I explained to the sheriff office 1 month ago, 2 months ago, what happened, and I told him, and his imagination is wrong. The jail is the hell. It's full of drugs, full of bad people, bad elements. This is awful. So this is all together. And this is very worrying for me, and I repeat this because I was here in June 7 in the first meeting right here. I come out of the jail free and clean because I never was a criminal. When they put me in jail, I was a school teacher, and I never crossed one only red light on my life. I was here on June 2nd, and on June 17th, somebody hit me with a car. On September 9th, some guys come and jump on me and broke my leg and opened my head. The police officer, they refused to give me medical attention and fire department. So the sheriff office and the jail, they was very clear with me. If you open your mouth, you're gonna die. We're gonna kill you. I already give the name and the base number of the sheriff officer and the people who tortured me on the jail. They put me on everywhere because they want to close my mouth. I never did nothing, but I was on 4th Avenue, I was on LBJ, I was on Towers, I was on Durango, and I was everywhere. And they put me 50 days in the hall, and I never did nothing. So everything is wrong. The sheriff never gonna say, I'm sorry. You are looking for on the YouTube, and you will see the interview when they say, you have to stop Arpaio, say one newsman. And he say, I never gonna stop because I am Italian. I have Italian blood. So this is a very ignorant response. This person is not good to this job. He is far away that he have to be out of the sheriff's department. He's too old and he needs a lot of education. I need to say that. If somebody kill me the next days, I know that he don't did what happened to me in the last weeks. But it's obvious that the people who say that they're gonna kill me, they are worried because they can't go to jail if something happened and they catch him. I tell them the name on the badge, and I am waiting, but they do with the investigation. And I know the kind of investigation they do in the jail, Mickey Mouse investigation. They don't do nothing. I hope that you, sir, the monitor, do a good investigation. Since the beginning, I give you my name, my phone number, and right now, nobody contacted me, and I called a couple of times, and nobody give me any answer to me.
Well, this is what we'll do, because one of the things we want to do is we want to give as many people as the opportunity as is possible for them to speak. And we certainly have seen you here before, and we've spoken to you before. But if there's some information that you would like to share with us, for us to follow through to see if something was not looked into that was supposed to be looked into, you see us right after this meeting and let us handle it.
I want that you guys understand, I have my kids, I have my grandsons. If you don't see me because somebody killed me in the next weeks, I told you what is happening in my life, okay?
I understand. Thank you.
Él está explicando lo que él está de acuerdo con la falta de tratamiento médico que pasa en la cárcel, que él sufrió lo mismo, y él ha sufrido muchos abusos en la cárcel bajo las manos del oficial de sheriff.
Buenas noches. Good evening.
Good evening, Chief Walsham. And thank you for returning to this community. I think it was about a year ago, ¿no? That you were here last. Hace más o menos como un año que estuvimos aquí, ¿no? And I think I can recall then that we mentioned the events of Selma and Dr. King and his voice that was raised. Nos recordamos del Martin Luther King y lo que él dijo. And this is appropriate again because the 50th anniversary just happened with the bridge crossing in another sheriff, another county, but the same racism, the same syndrome of racism. And what I would like to do would make a comment in 3 parts, if you would allow. One, we read you the process of the proceedings themselves that we would address to you, Chief Washaw, and one would be a specific question to the representative of the Sheriff's Office with a follow-through question once we hear his response. First of all, remembering what Martin Luther King said after Selma in 67. Recordando lo que dijo Martin Luther King después de 67, he said, we have emerged from the era of civil rights to the era of human rights. He said that in 67, and in 68 he was killed. Dijo que ya hemos emergido de la era de derechos civiles a la era de derechos humanos, y luego lo mataron, Martin Luther King. This is significant because of the proceedings. We're talking about the proceedings, el contexto del procedimiento del caso Melendez versus Arpaio. This relates to the fact that the racial profiling nomenclatures used in the trial, the racial profiling designations identified in the trial for corrections, identify racial profiling against, we can hear you? What's the term that is used in the case? Racial profiling against, in the Melendez case, against Latinos, no? This is correct. Why is this a human rights issue for us? I represent the Comité de Defensa del Barrio, the Human Rights Commission of the Comité. Why is this a human rights issue for us? If you see us here, you will notice none of us are immigrants from Italy. We may have Italian blood, and welcome. None of us are immigrants from Spain. We may have blood from Spain, and that's also welcome. We have blood from all of the continents of the 4 corners of Mother Earth because we are the Nicantraca, we are the Mexican people. Why is this significant for the proceedings? Because of the term Latin and the designation Latin America. It wasn't even existing until 1853, which is 6 years, 8 years later after the border was established. In other words, we've been invisibilized in the proceedings as Mexicans. Discrimination, although it's mentioned in the memo that was found in Chief Arpaio's office, dark-skinned Mexicans, I believe that was the memo, what it said. That was what was said. We haven't seen that piece of paper, but we would like to see that piece of paper. You could bring it to the next hearing. Here's my point. The discrepancies that we have identified at this moment, we present to you in written form in this communique, which was also presented to the County Board of Supervisors upon the first decision when the trial phase of the court, Melendez was closed. Now here comes the question for the representative of the Sheriff's Office. It was mentioned, technology, cameras, tests, examines. Yes, but we know it's actually a cultural issue that goes to the mental health of the culture of the department itself. So here's my question to you. You mentioned the long road. You mentioned the challenges that you have come so far over 1 year, no? But when you said, you also acknowledged, I heard you say it, that we have a long ways to go, no? You said that, no? Please tell us, what are the challenges internal within the department that you are facing as you go forward on this long road to eliminate racial profiling as a cultural norm within the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and Maricopa County in general, and let's just say across the land, no? Get it out there. What are the challenges that you are facing within the department to address the culture of racial profiling in the department? And then I have a follow-through question, Chief Walsh, if you would allow.
Let me respond to the first part. I, of course, always enjoy our interchange. And Dan, I may ask you to tell me this. I think we have to differentiate between what constituted the plaintiff's class, and that, I believe, was defined as Latinos and as represented by plaintiff's attorneys. But the identification with whatever terms were used or used in that order does not mean that the application of constitutional policing is not relevant to everybody.
Él está explicando que aunque el pleito fue por el grupo de los latinos, las aplicaciones de todos estos cambios de protecciones de la Constitución afecta a todo el mundo. Afecta sea latino, no sea latino, afroamericano, lo que sea, el enfoque es lo mismo, aunque los que me pusieron el pleito fueron los miembros de la clase latina.
Y esta no es la primera vez que he oído esta pregunta. Okay? Yo entiendo. Okay? Now, Chief Trump, I think you want.
So, to reiterate your question, sir, is what is the challenge that we face? There's a number of challenges, but let me say what the greatest challenge that we have. Trust. And I'm not talking internally, I'm talking here with you and everybody in here. Trust is our greatest challenge, and it's the one thing that all of these other components that we're putting together through tracking how we're stopping people, who we're stopping, and all this other data that we're gathering, the use of cameras, all of this information is what we will eventually be able to provide to you so that we can accomplish the biggest challenge, and that is trust.
Thank you for your answer. I can appreciate the sentiment, and at the same time, I have to also add on to this, my sentiment is that no apology would be sufficient. There's no apology that would be sufficient for, we operate a food bank 3 blocks from here, and I can still recall the day when 2 uniformed officers of the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office parked on the curb outside of our food bank and basically intimidated the families who were coming to the bank to get food for their hungry children. No apology will suffice to remove that hurt from our community, same as no apology will suffice for the intrusion into a public school of a law enforcement official in the form of a sheriff who created emotional abuse on our children in the public schools by lending his presence in a public school with this cachet that is carried on of being, well, we know the story. Here's my point, sir. My question is this: have you identified the pathology? We've been using the term white, people of color. White is a color. White is a color. It's just when we say people of color, we're really saying people of the wrong color. Why are we saying that? Because we are identifying white as being the color of supremacy. My question is this, sir. My question is this, Mr. Walsh, and to all of us here. Have we identified the pathology of white supremacy as the driving psychological dynamic that produces this scenario that we're dealing in this hearing today and also in the court case? The pathology of white scenario. Where is it being identified in the trainings, in the evaluation process that goes back to the very fact that we've been invisibilized as earth-skinned people of Lenikantarapa? Thank you.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Rosa Pastrana y yo soy líder de la comunidad. Yo anoche di una entrevista en español. ¿No quiere traducir?
Her name is Ms. Pastrana, and she's one of the community leaders, and yesterday she did a press conference.
Y yo vine aquí a comentar de que la oficina de MCSO, o sea del sheriff, yo veo que sí se están esforzando en hacer algo con la comunidad hispana. Sí, bueno, lo siento. Yo les digo porque ellos han ido a las escuelas, han estado hablando con la comunidad. Yo sé que aquí a lo mejor hay mucha gente que está en contra, Pero pues también por eso mucha gente no viene y no quiere hablar de los arrestos que tuvieron y agarraron sus papeles, porque somos atacados por gentes como ustedes. Entonces, en lugar de tener confianza de venir a apoyarnos, ustedes nos vienen a atacar a nosotros, entre hispanos. No quieren reconocer que realmente hay cosas afuera que están pasando, no es todo lo que hay.
And she's saying that she has seen some changes in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, that they're sending their officers to the schools to do some training. So she sees an effort. Por favor, le pedimos que todo el mundo tiene la oportunidad de decir su opinión. No quiere decir que todos estamos de acuerdo o están de acuerdo con lo que está diciendo, pero la Constitución nos da todo el derecho como todos tuvieron su derecho de decir su opinión.
Y por último, yo sé de gente muy cercana a mí, que yo vivo en apartamentos, gente que vive en apartamentos, que esa gente no está aquí. ¿Y por qué esa gente no está aquí? Yo eso quisiera saber, y yo soy de las únicas, o a lo mejor de la única mujer que estoy aquí parada diciendo lo que he visto con mis propios ojos, y he escuchado de gente que dice, oh, gracias a estas personas, yo he agarrado papeles y han ido a estas juntas comunitarias en sus barrios pequeños.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been here for 2 hours, and there are always, every time we're here, always people that have additional questions. I understand. This is why we stand around for a while after this is over, and I want you to feel free to come up to any one of us. We've heard some passionate commentary tonight. We've heard some criticisms. You posed some tough questions on the monitor. I get that. I understand that. That's what these processes are. This is what these processes have to be. The only thing I would ask of you is that we do this every month, and we do this at a different location every month. So to the extent that you want the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office to hear your concerns, and to the extent that they want to hear your concerns and make adjustments accordingly, we're going to suggest that you return to our future meetings and you ask your friends and your neighbors to return to our future meetings, because it's only going to be through this kind of dialogue will we ever have a chance of bringing together people who are strongly in disagreement with each other, but share a common home here in Maricopa County. So I thank everyone for coming here tonight. I thank the sheriff for being here tonight. And again, we're going to stick around afterwards, so if we didn't recognize you, don't be offended. We'll be sticking around and you can come up to us personally. Thank you very much.
El jefe está diciendo que aunque vamos a parar la reunión, estamos aquí para oír de ustedes, usted puede venir a hablar con nosotros y por favor que sigan viniendo a estas reuniones y que nos digan, yo sé que puede ser que le pasó algo hace 4 años, pero si le pasó algo el mes de marzo, el mes de febrero, el mes de enero, que nos pueden decir que está pasando todavía estos abusos, es importante para nosotros de saber lo que está pasando. Gracias, y si tienen cualquier queja o lo que sea, estamos aquí para hablar con ustedes.